Hi, I'm Riley McManus. Welcome to Word for Word, where we offer you an in-depth look at some of our interviews with newsmakers from across the region. You'll have the opportunity to hear word for word how they responded to the news of the day. The administrator for the Thunder Bay Police Services Board has had his term extended once again. The Ontario Civilian Police Commission has decided Malcolm Mercer should stay in the role until the end of March 2024, but his sole voting power will expire in the coming months.
Obviously, Mercer's term extended another year. Just take us through what exactly that means, and I guess just some of those details from your perspective.
I think what it means is the board, will have the ongoing support of Mr. Mercer in terms of his advice and expertise. The details of the order indicate that he continues to have the sole vote as he currently does until the end of June, and then all members will vote. And then once we have a fifth member, because there is still a vacant provincial seat, then Mr. Mercer will continue on solely in an advisory capacity. And, that's sort of a tactical withdrawal, if you will, of his supports. And he's certainly had that conversation with the board, input, before this order came out. And I think the board appreciates what he brings and has brought to us and getting us in a place to move forward.
Thanks for that clarification. There was something I was a little more curious about. I wasn't sure how that would work if that provincial position isn't filled by that point. Does Mercer fill that in an interim role? What would that look like?
Well, he doesn't fill the seat per se. His role is, in addition to the 4 or 5 members of the board. And so if the provincial seat continues to go unfilled, which, we've had in the past, we've had vacancies go on for several months, then the order indicates that he would continue to have one vote at the table along with the other 4 members. So that starts as of July the 1st. So.
And fair to say that was a decision made by, I guess, the OCPC commissioner on the advice of Mr. Mercer? Is that?
Mr. Mercer provided input. If you look at the order, it details quite a length of documents that OCPC reviewed in getting to that decision. But yes, it's OCPC's decision in terms of his appointment and his ongoing work with the board.
Do you have any kind of pulse check on how the board feels about that transition plan? And I know we just heard about it this morning, but anything you can say about that?
Well, Mr. Mercer did consult with the board last month, knowing that his term was coming up and he was going to be making some submission to OCPC, and so he sought the board's view on things. And generally, the board's view was, they appreciated his presence and his ongoing work and support as we begin to get up and get moving forward. And, keep in mind, we've only just got 4 new members in the last couple of months. And so once we get past the appointment of the new chief of police, the governance committee will shift into policy work, which is the bulk of the work that's ahead of the board, and making recommendations to the board on that. And so that's where we're headed, and the board looks forward to doing that work.
You touched on it a bit in your first answer, obviously extended another year, but how beneficial has his presence been on the board over the last, I guess it'd be more than a year now?
Well, it's since April of last year, so not quite a year.
Thank you.
Personally, I've enjoyed working with Mr. Mercer. He's brings a depth of experience that has been proven to be valuable, and his way of approaching issues, a very fair individual, I would say. He's very good at, has been, and seeking out opinions of all those involved before he exercises his decision capacity. So, if anyone was worried that he was sort of unilaterally making decisions, I would say that's certainly not the case. I mean, yes, he has the only vote, but, he has sought the views of everybody concerned before he makes decisions on matters. And I think his understanding over all of the issues have been fair and balanced, and that's helped us structure things to go forward. The creation of the governance committee, the recent establishment of the labor relations committee, those are things that I've had the ability to work with Mr. Mercer on and get us ready to undertake the work and succeed going forward.
What are the key things that need to happen between now and July 1st, in your opinion, as part of this transition, I guess?
I think the next key step for us really is, getting the new chief on board and getting the governance committee up and active on the policy front. They've been working over the last few months, but solely on the chief recruitment. And so now it's getting that policy work underway. and seeing the board actively engaged in that. I expect we're going to wind up with all 4 current members of the board on the governance committee, along with the 2, well, eventually 3 committee reps. 2 currently, we have a vacancy there with Denise's appointment to the board. But getting that work up and underway is really where we're going to be focused, and supporting the new chief as the new chief takes office in the near future.
How near?
Can't say right now, but hopefully we'll have an announcement fairly soon.
Any hint whether that be an inside or outside hire?
I can't comment on that.
You know we gotta try.
I know.
Yeah, I guess beyond that, looking beyond July 1st, Mr. Mercer's role beyond that, as you're saying, will just be that of a normal board member.
Largely, I mean, I think he will serve very much an advisory capacity to the board, but he will have a vote along with the other 4 members. So, in practice, he's perhaps a regular board member with a little extra role tacked on. If you read through the order, it talks about him, being able to attend all meetings and subcommittees and so forth. So he has a little more involvement than perhaps a regular board member would have. But yes, he, as I said, sort of a gradual withdrawal of his role, as he moves through that transition, depending on when we get the 5th board member.
My last question, I think, is now fleeing my mind. Yeah. Great. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so Mr. Mercer had said in his last comments to City Council a month or 2 ago that, his goal is to make sure this situation doesn't rise again, that the board doesn't find itself in this position again, and that it's set up for success in the future. How confident are you feeling about that at this moment?
I'm quite confident. I mean, look at the work that Mr. Mercer's done with us over the last 10, 11 months, and just the way he approaches his work. The fact that we now have this sort of planned withdrawal, to ensure that the board really is functioning well and moving forward without him sort of departing abruptly, and which is somewhat what happened with the last appointment. So I think that that certainly has played into this decision, I'm sure. And so, he'll make sure that we're where we need to be before he, steps off the stage. And I'm quite confident that we're headed in the right direction. We've got good people on the board, good people on our committees, and with his ongoing support, we're looking forward to moving business along where it should be.
Off the top, we saw the announcement this morning that Mercer's term would be extended another year. What was your immediate reaction to that?
I did have an inkling that he would be extended. We are missing a person on our board. We are still waiting for that provincial appointee. I'm not really concerned at all, and in fact, I think it's a good thing. I'm the longest running member, and I barely have a year. The Police Act is very heavy, and it's actually being changed to the Community Services Policing Act. Double check me on that name. So yeah, the Policing Act is changing. There's going to be a lot of changes coming, and a lot of moving parts, and I don't think that we have the specific experience around the board yet to really get us to where we need to go.
And I guess from your point of view, like you said, you have some of the most experience on that board. Talk about that learning curve and how maybe having someone like Mercer, especially with 2 fresh members and another provincial appointee coming in, will be beneficial.
Yeah, these are very trying times. I'd probably say the last decade we've seen so much changes within the police force and just how we do community safety. A lot of different approaches are coming out, especially through the inquest, the OCPC and OIRPD, that we really need to get this right. We need as much help as we can. We don't have any specific funding to implement these changes. We're working on a skeleton crew as it is. We have issues within the police force, attracting and retaining new recruits and officers. It's a real challenge, and I'm very happy that we have at least Malcolm Mercer on board to kind of help navigate us through this.
Are there like a few key things that you think need to happen before maybe even you'd be comfortable with him stepping back from his role? Or how will you kind of feel like, okay, now it's time for him to step back and for the board to take over again?
I would like the new chief of police to have at least a year under their belt. I won't say too much more about who that person is, but we are getting much closer. I would like them to really understand Thunder Bay and how their role is going to impact the community and how we feel about our community. So I think a year would be a decent amount of time to kind of assess and then see where we go from there. Because this is probably the highest profile board of all of council and all of Thunder Bay, really. We really need to move forward to get this right.
And what about, like, what role does the full report of the expert panel play in that? How will that play into the board's governance going forward in this transition?
Mm-hmm. I see the expert panel as one of many recommendations that have come forward. I think it's going to be a bit of an evolutionary process. A couple of the things in the expert panel are going to need money. We need money to do this. I'd really like to see a board strategic plan rolled out. That was something that I think the past board was trying to work on and have maybe set us up a little bit for it, but I haven't really seen anything that's, that comes forward. Like, these are our benchmarks and tools to use, but then again, we don't have the money for it. It's really quite sad, and I am hopeful, though, that with Malcolm still on board, that we could find some way to move this forward, and yeah.
Sorry, go ahead if you have that.
Okay, I was saying, like, obviously it sounds like you believe the benefits that Mercer's bringing to this board. Is there still a bit of, like, I guess, a bit of an itch on your part with him having sole voting power at this point to kind of be able to have a little more of an input, or is it that patience that maybe might pay off in the end?
Yeah, we absolutely need to exercise patience. I understand the community members might be a bit, I don't know what the right word is, but they might be a little suspicious of somebody from Toronto coming to dictate to us how to do the policing. But the reality is we have a lot of experience around the board, not specific to policing. Like, Karen Michano is amazing. She's got a lot of, like, a good background in corrections. Denise Baxter is probably one of the smartest ladies you'll ever meet, and she's got such a great academic lens. Ken Boschkoff, who's been, a Thunder Bay institution since 1970, whatever. And then you got myself, who I don't believe in, things left unsaid, and I will ask tough questions. And I think with the four of us, and then we add another member, it's just making sure that team is prepared and well versed in the issues and understands what our role is and what our role isn't. So I think that's where we might have gotten in trouble before.
I'm not necessarily expecting you to know this, but there was some mention of Mr. Mercer transitioning to, like, an observer status or observer role. Do you have any insight into what that could involve? It sounds like some kind of interim period, maybe.
Yeah. So I think how I understood it was that if the province hasn't filled that fifth seat, that he could possibly take that fifth seat as an interim until the province finds that person.
After a highly successful stint on Broadway that includes 5 Tony Award nominations, Robert Askin's hilarious dark comedy Hand to God is up next on the main stage at Magnus Theatre. And while the story revolves around a puppet show, it's not a play that parents should bring their kids to.
So tell us about the play.
Hey, I'll tell you about the play. Hand to God is, the reason I chose Hand to God was because I sat down to read it and it made me laugh out loud multiple times. It's just such a funny story about a young guy in a puppet troupe in a church basement in Cypress, Texas, who his puppet starts to take over him. So the puppet becomes the puppeteer, and the puppet starts saying those things that might be bouncing around inside a 17-year-old boy's head at any given time. So yeah, to me, that's one of the funniest parts about the play. It's also a very serious story about a family that has lost their dad and how the family's dealing with that. with societal expectations and church expectations and community expectations. Those are the things that really drew me to this play for Thunder Bay. And it's also, like, for me, it's so funny. It's just so funny to watch a puppet become incredibly foul-mouthed. As I was telling you before, I was a puppeteer for almost 18 years, touring all across North America, doing shows for kids, and I thought, well, this is kind of in my wheelhouse, to have a puppet show wherein the puppet kind of takes over, and it's violent and it's profane and it's just hysterically funny.
And then beyond the laughs and the profanity and all that jazz, as you said, a very deep story there too,
Yeah.
about the family, Jason having to move on from the loss of his father.
The loss of his dad and his mom dealing with the loss of his dad, and dealing, trying to follow the rules to make your life better, like we're told in society, well, you behave this way and your life will work out. And what's happening for Marjorie, Jason's mom, is it's not necessarily working out that way. So what I love about it is that it makes her question everything, and the way he deals with it, the way her son deals with it, Jason, is to kind of come up with this character of Tyrone, who then terrorizes the entire community as he becomes more and more devilish. So yeah, it's really funny. So I think, we put on the warning, don't bring the kids. You'll see the puppet on the poster and think, oh, that's a show for the kids. And it's absolutely not a show for the kids. But it is a show for people who enjoy a good laugh. If you're a fan of South Park, if you're, that kind of stuff that you're just like, oh, it's a little extreme, some bad stuff happens, but you can't help but laugh at it.
That'd pretty much be the message to those going, oh, I don't know if I can handle the profanity. They love coming to the Magnus, but
Yeah.
the profanity might not be for them.
Well, yeah, and if you are totally sensitive to it, maybe this will be one that you skip, but you'll miss a really good laugh because it is extreme language at times that you're just kind of going, well, I can't believe they put that sentence together. So yeah, that's one of the great things, and a great cast, an all local Thunder Bay cast. Hudson Morash, of course, is playing Jason and Tyrone, and he's taken to the puppeteering like a duck to water. I mean, he didn't start puppeteering till about 3 weeks ago. He's experienced on stages across Thunder Bay. He's been with Cambrian Players. He's been with Badani, Applause, All the Days Productions for years. And it's as a 17-year-old boy who is being controlled by a puppet while he plays the puppet and yells at himself, he's just terrific. And then, of course, we have Andrew Seacon and Amy Sellers, both veterans of the Magnus stage and stages across Canada. Amy, of course, was at Stratford and, a lot of big theaters across the country, as was Andrew. We've had... We also have Gabriel Vaillant, who's joining us. It's his debut at Magnus. He just got back. He was nominated for a Dora in Toronto last year. And Carly Martin returns. People will remember her from Men of La Mancha last fall, playing the niece. So it's great to have everybody from Thunder Bay on a Thunder Bay stage telling a story that I think is going to make Thunder Bay laugh really hard.
Thanks for joining us for today's edition of Word for Word. We'll be back again tomorrow with more interviews from across the Northwest.